Because of this climate of impunity, Mexican human rights defenders and human rights lawyers frequently resort to applying for protective measures in the inter-American human rights system, and they're nearly always granted. In fact, I'm not aware of a single case where they haven't been granted. They're awarded, as I told you, in urgent cases to prevent injury to persons under threat, and they need to be sought after domestic remedies have been exhausted and have failed to provide protection. Generally, the measures are ordered in the area of investigation, accompaniment, and infrastructure. So that could include police guard, security lights, and things of that nature. And they've been ordered in numerous cases. Mexico is a little bit two-faced in the way it responds to them. It has a strong record of accepting and responding to the measures ordered, and even at times has argued before the Inter-American Court in support of protective measures being ordered against them. But the implementation of the protective measures has been prevented by delays and by bureaucracy. The protective measures are overseen by a person working in the office of the Ministry of the Interior who we met with, but he still needs to negotiate between federal and state officials in each instance. And the implementation of the measures generally have to be carried out at the state level because the federal government has a limited ability to intervene. And state officials can't be forced to comply, and this is a problem because overwhelmingly the human rights violations are being committed at the state level, and the failure to investigate is happening at the state level. And so you have a situation where you see members of, say, a police force are being ordered to accompany and protect a defender, and this is actually the same police force who's implicated in the threats against them. Another problem that hampers the implementation of these measures is that, understandably, considering everything I've outlined to you here, there's a serious issue of mistrust between the state and the people who are in need of protection, and this hinders communication. But there have been some positive developments. It's not all dire to the situation. There's a commitment at the federal level to protecting human rights defenders, and that exists in their National Human Rights Program. And Mexico also responded positively to all recommendations that were made to it respecting human rights defenders in its 2009 Universal Periodic Review before the United Nations Human Rights Committee. In the future, Mexico needs to work to strengthen institutional responses to threats against lawyers and human rights defenders, especially the gap in practice and commitment to human rights between the federal government and between state and local authorities. This is a long-term problem. It's a vestige of the old one-party system, and it's going to require a long-term solution. In addition, the roles of officials need to be clarified. We met with many authorities, and they told us time and time again that they would love to act in a given matter to protect human rights, but they couldn't do it because it was outside of their jurisdiction, and it was instead another office who was responsible for it. And almost invariably, when we visited that other office, they told me it was the first office's responsibility for that issue. So these roles need to be clarified. And measures also need to be taken to improve the perception of human rights defenders. And Mexico actually committed to doing this during its Universal Periodic Review. In addition, the delegation found that Mexico should adopt a formal process for the request and implementation of protective measures domestically, so people don't need to resort to the inter-American human rights system. Right now, the way that they're implemented is on a total ad hoc basis, and so that should be changed. And intergovernmental cooperation should also be formalized between the federal and state and municipal levels. And it should also include municipal actors because right now they're excluded from the process. And the people we met with definitely implicated municipal officials in human rights abuses. So they need to be a part of this. So in conclusion, problems of organized crime, insecurity, poverty, and social inequality won't be addressed in Mexico without a fair and effective justice system, a justice system that promotes reconciliation between historically disparate groups. And none of this is going to be possible, in the delegation's view, until impunity for human rights violations is ended and the safety of human rights lawyers and human rights defenders and all civil society actors is ensured. We were encouraged by the candor of the Mexican officials we met with in acknowledging the issues they face and also by their commitment to implementing human rights policies. But at the same time, there are cultural and institutional obstacles in the justice and security sectors that are undermining their efforts. The delegation is concerned that the most vulnerable members of society are suffering the most from these institutional failings, and this includes Indigenous people and human rights defenders. There's a need to combat the narcotics trade, but the use of the military to achieve this has resulted in cases of human rights abuses and impunity for military offenders who violate civilian human rights. The Inter-American Court decisions in the case of Rosendo Radilla, Fernandez and Rosendo are the two women who were raped, and the decision was released by the Inter-American Court this past October, this month. And the Radilla case is the individual who was disappeared in the 1970s, and that case came down in December of 2009. They all affirmed the need for Mexico to cease the use of military jurisdiction and to protect human rights abuses against civilians that are committed by members of the armed forces. In addition, protective measures need to be adequately implemented, and issues with regard to access to justice should be addressed. It's hoped that the 2008 Public Security and Criminal Justice Reform programs I mentioned earlier, notably including the change to a common law style trial system, will be implemented without delay. So thank you very much, and if there's any questions, I'll take them now.